I couldn't resist his sense of humor because he was wearing a hat and it had a button, is it okay if I say? That said, sorry girls, I'm gay. So here is Tim S. from Pleasant Hill.
My name's Tim, I'm an alcoholic.
Hi, Tim.
And I identify as pansexual, which I'll get into later with why that's been ruining my life. I don't typically get nervous when I share, but for whatever reason, I have a lot of respect for Mayhew. And I've spoken at a lot of 12-step meetings. But I'm nervous, so let's roll with that. I initially got sober when I was about 17 or 18. I stayed sober for about a year, and then I relapsed. Eventually, I went to a mental health facility up in Connecticut. I was living in, I grew up on the East Coast, and they told my dad when I was there, Mr. Smith, you need to come pick up your son. And my dad was like, why? And they told him, Mr. Smith, we're afraid of him. When we look into his eyes, there's nothing looking back, and we don't know what to do with him. So my dad scrambled, did what my dad does best, and he got me into a treatment center where I met a therapist who would save my life. His name was Robert Johnson. This facility was a 90-day program. I was there for 2 years. While I was there, they made a lot of exceptions for me. First off, Robert knew right off the bat, he knew my secret before I knew it. He knew that I had been molested at some point in early childhood. And I either didn't know it or just wasn't willing to look at it. And I'll circle back to that as well. But from that point, I managed to stay sober for 12 and a half years, and then some other stuff happened, which I'll get to, and I gave that up. As I stand here now, I have just shy of 8 months. So I'm pretty proud of that. But I learned the hard way that sobriety, the amount of time you have, really does not equal recovery. So as I grew up, I had a brother and a sister. I'm the youngest. My brother is the middle child. Oh, yes, I will. So, happily repeat that. So yes, so growing up, I was the youngest. My brother is the middle child. My sister was the oldest. They were both much better in school than I was. Both very athletic, both very popular. And I was, the lost child. I was depressed. I was suicidal at the age of 9. I was, no one in my family really knew what to do with me. My mom got me. She bought me all the Legos, all the train sets, all of the, all of the things I wanted. I never lacked for art supplies. I never lacked for all sorts of things. My dad was a workaholic, so he was just never around. So he, his goal was to buy us off at Christmas. It was ridiculous. Every Christmas it was a whole new wardrobe, whole new set of skis, new gaming system, stockings that were just unreal. And I remember even then, I remember thinking to myself, something isn't right about this. My dad, he died with 10 years sober. I initially went to the same rehab as him when I had gotten my first year sober. He eventually passed of lung cancer, and my mom passed about 5 years after that. She literally drank herself to death. There was some infidelity with my dad after they divorced, My dad married my mom's best friend, who he'd been cheating on. So, but this is about me. At no point in my childhood did I feel loved, did I feel wanted, or did I feel accepted. There are moments where, I felt that my dad got me. I remember we'd go to the beach, and my dad taught me how to, carry a cup of coffee without spilling it all over myself, a skill I haven't quite mastered. There's a lot of good moments, but I always thought in the back of my mind that somewhere in my dad's calendar was, 1 hour, spend time with Tim, and then the rest of the time, everyone he worked with loved him, but I never really felt. So anyway, as it relates to my alcoholism, my first drink, and my brother can attest to this, I have a hard time believing it, but I was 10 years old. We were on a family vacation in Bermuda or the Bahamas. I get them all mixed up. But apparently I won a bottle of champagne in a limbo contest. I guess being 10 years old, not the hardest thing to do. But I walked up and down the beach drinking that. And then my mom always had this funny tasting milk. It was not what you might be thinking. It was, I guess now would be a White Russian. So I was drinking that all the time. And there was plenty of sangria at family parties. But at some point I actually started drinking because I knew what I was doing. And at the height of my drinking, I was putting back 2 bottles of Johnny Walker a night, not even feeling tipsy. And that tolerance scared the crap out of me because, as far as I know, I only remember really 2 blackouts. I don't really. I guess that's the point of blackouts. You don't really remember them. But there was a time I was living in Pleasant Hill. I was really trying to stay sober, but I couldn't. Apart from being gay, I am also dually diagnosed. I have bipolar. I have OCD, far and beyond that of an alcoholic. I have ADHD that's very severe, and I may or may not be on the autism spectrum. We haven't gotten there yet. But lately, I've been suffering from a neurological condition that if you make me laugh in a certain way, I'll just faint. So that's really scary. So when I eventually moved back from Florida. When I was in the treatment center for 2 years, I was down in Florida. I moved back to an SLE. We actually called them halfway houses on the East Coast. And I was doing well. I'm going to backtrack. While I was down in Florida, I had a halfway house manager who he felt I had an addiction to porn, which I won't lie, I like it, but he felt it would be a good idea to force me to masturbate in front of him without any porn, and he wouldn't let me leave the room until I finished. And when I told my dad that, he just said, "Oh, okay," and did nothing. Growing up, my best friend's parents, they, I didn't think that this was out of the ordinary, but from the age of 10 to, from the age of about 8 to about 13, every day on my birthday, in front of the whole family, they pulled down my pants and they spanked me with a wooden paddle. And no one in my family knew this was occurring. So I think I can get to the root of my alcoholism. I eventually found what would become, hello Moto, the root of, like my drug of choice, which isn't alcohol, it's marijuana. Because it was the only thing that numbed me. Alcohol sure, it squelched the pain. But when I was smoking weed, at least I was coherent and I could more or less function in life. When I moved out to California, when I got here, I had about 3 or 4 years sober. I was doing a butt ton of service. I was working at a Starbucks at the time. I was working at Ann Taylor Loft and Starbucks. So as a coffee maker, that worked out pretty well because I always had a free pound of coffee. So that made me pretty popular. And I just came up doing a lot of service, which, in theory, service will keep you sober. Service will get you in the center of the herd. And service will do a lot of things to help your sobriety. In my case, however, because I'm so freaking codependent, I will do so much service to the point where I'll burn out, to the point where it's no longer doing service, to the point where I just lose myself. And that's kind of gets into the core of what I want to talk about. In relationships, this is kind of where I am in my recovery today. Someone spoke at a new meeting I went to today about love. And love is a very tricky thing for me. I know it's core to a lot of things. It's core to my recovery. But I simply don't know the difference between platonic and romantic love, especially in relationships with women. In the past, in all of my romantic relationships with women, especially in recovery, I have been arrogant. I have been, in some cases, physically and emotionally abusive. And I was married once for 9 months. With nine years sober, I was using my recovery against my wife. I would, because I'm a smart guy, I would use my intellect to win every argument, even when I was wrong. So at some point, she threw a plate at my head, and I don't blame her. We ended the marriage, and I moved on. But before that, I was in a relationship with a woman who was just the opposite. I was, for her own reasons, she was very emotionally cut off. She was very cold. And because I have a hero syndrome, I thought I could save her. I thought I could fix her. I thought I could be her savior. And I hung in as long as I could, and that relationship didn't work out. We went our separate ways. I met my ex-wife, and then eventually we got back together. I stayed sober through all of this. I stayed sober through the death of both my parents. In fact, in the times that are hardest for me are the times my sobriety feels the strongest. So those are the times I lean on my support group. Those are the times I put myself in the middle of the herd. My sobriety is shakiest when things are going well in my life. So in that relationship, after my marriage, I met back up with the woman who would become my ex-fiance, and I followed that relationship down to Southern California. While I was down there, things were great for a while. I thought, I was basically playing house. I was living in her uncle's house. I almost bought it. We had pomegranate trees in the backyard. It was beautiful. She made pomegranate everything. To this day, I can't eat pomegranate. I'm so freaking sick of them. But at some point, she had her first miscarriage. And then she had another. And then she had the third. And at some point, I had a stress-induced seizure. I saw a therapist down there. This is a therapist who counseled ex-military, active and inactive police officers, and other people like that. And he said, "Mr. Smith, you are by far the most tense person I've ever met." And at that point, my head was so far up my ass, I took that as a point of pride. But as I said, not long after that, I had a stress-induced seizure, ran a red light, and was T-boned. I walked out of the hospital surprisingly that day with only scratches, but it woke me up. There's a beast inside of me. There is anger inside of me that I don't always feel I control. My understanding of the first step has always been that I was powerless over my alcoholism, that I was powerless over people, places, and things, all the things external to me that I can't control, and as a result, my life gets unmanageable. Today, especially now through all the neurological stuff I'm going through, and all of the turmoil I'm going through trying to figure out relationships, I don't always feel that I have control over myself. I don't always feel that I have control over my thoughts. And that's a level of powerlessness and a level of surrender I never thought I'd get to. And it's extremely humbling, at the same time extremely, extremely scary. So I was reading through Miss Trudy's one of her books. I was reading through all of the different comments, and everyone says how much they love her, how much and I hear it all the time in rooms that we go around saying we love each other, and there are so many people that I care about, so many people I love, and so many people who have shown me love, and I'm just getting to the point where I can actually love myself. I'm not quite there. But I believe that love is an action word. I believe it's something we have to do. We can't just say it. We can't just feel it. There have been times in recent history where I was at the lowest I've been in sobriety. And the people who showed up for me showed up in such a way that I didn't expect. People taking me to the hospital, people taking me, I'm no longer legally able to drive, so I'm dependent on people for rides. I had a friend, I have a friend. I had to go to the emergency room recently because I had roughly 50 fainting spells in a 48-hour period, and I was like, "Fuck this! I got to take this seriously." And I called her because I was afraid, and because I don't know how to be alone. And she said, "Tim, are you in the hospital alone?" I said, "Yeah." So she came all the way from Vacaville. She was there within 15 minutes. Oh, maybe a half hour. I don't know. My concept of time is warped. So people are showing up for me, and as a result, I'm learning how to do that for others. I'm learning how to be a good friend. I'm learning how to love people the way they've been showing me that love. But this is where it gets tricky for me because in relationships, in romantic relationships with men, I can have fun. I can go on a date and not get emotionally entangled. But if a woman I find attractive, so much as smiles at me, the wedding is planned, we're retiring on a beach somewhere, and it's beautiful. And I have a lot of female friends, and I've been carefully trying to actually be a friend. Not trying to cross that line, not trying to romanticize things, not trying to be that creepy guy that's just trying to get into someone's pants. And it's been ripping me apart because with the best of intentions, I've been hurting people. With the best of intentions, I've been crossing boundaries. So I have to tell, especially my female friends, listen, if at any point I feel standoffish, it's not because I don't love you. It's because I love you enough to protect you from me. And that's a weird thing to say, but it's necessary, because if I'm ever truly going to learn to love myself and learn how to have a healthy relationship, I need to heal. I just finished one of the deepest 6 steps I'd ever done, and so far my steps have been around relationships. I've also been going to a different 12-step fellowship on codependence, and trying to heal myself, not just around my alcoholism, not just around my use of drugs, but my inability to accept the way I feel and look for ways to change that. Love is a good way to do that. Thank you, Miss Trudy. Someone once shared at a meeting, and I'm going to steal it because that's what I do. At least that's what I did, old behavior. That my addiction isn't to any particular substance. It isn't to alcohol. It isn't to anything. It's changing the way I feel. And for me, alcohol and other drugs were just the most efficient way of doing that. But I've used food, I've used sex, I've used just about anything I can do. Lately, I've been using service. At one point in recent history, I had 9 service commitments. And that sounds like, oh, cool, yeah, go you. But no, it's not. So my sponsor said, all right, Tim, you can have 3 service commitments. I'll allow you to do that. But you gotta give up 6 of them. And trying to decide which service commitments to give up ripped me up, because I basically had 9 home groups. That's no way to live. But now that I've given up some of that service, the service I do is more meaningful. The meetings that I go to have more meaning to me. And now, on any given night, I'm not doing service. If I don't want to go to a meeting and I want to go see cabaret with a friend, I will, and I have. I'm going to go tomorrow as well. I didn't get clean or sober, I'm sorry, just to work my steps. I didn't get sober just to go to meetings. I didn't go sober just to do service. I'm switching careers. I just mailed my application today for a program that Contra Costa has. It's called the Spirit Program. It's a 2-year free accredited course that fast tracks you to become either a counselor, psychiatrist, or what I want to do, a social worker. Initially, I want to help the homeless, because that's very meaningful to me. But once I have enough experience and once I have enough education, I want to counsel abused kids. Because I think that's one of the more healing things for me, so I can give back the experience that I have with that. These candles are beautiful. Thank you all for listening to me. Thank you for allowing me to come here and share my experience. I hope what I said rings true to some people, and I hope you benefit from it. Thank you.